was the name of that, Joe?
Gin Mill Blues.
When did you write it?
1932.
1932? Was that when you first recorded it?
Yes.
Where?
I suppose you know the idea back of that. You're much younger,
Yeah.
so I don't think you were going around the gin mills in Harlem like I did. That's where I learned so much from the very fine Negro pianists, Art Tatum and Willie the Lion Smith, who is still alive, thank God. And, oh, by the way, there was another little colored man by the name of Sullivan, who played piano.
Piano?
Yeah, he played a little, we called them gin mills in those days. They were just about this big and that high. And I just sat down one day and started playing the blues, and they liked it and said, we'll record that, and pardon me. So I called it the Gin Mill Blues, or just Gin Mill Blues.
Was that the first piano solo that you made?
Mm-hmm.
And had you been playing jazz long at that time?
Well, I guess since about 1924.
Did you
Not real jazz. I was very well being brought up on on the dear classical side, and doing all that. I had to study every day instead of going out and play football. I'd baseball in the summer, but I managed to get in enough sports till one day our football team was playing another Catholic school, St. Malachy's, I believe it was, or St. Thomas of something, and we were outweighed 40 pounds. And some big bruiser threw me, and he threw me for a loss, and I never played football again, not even touched football.
That's what made you concentrate on the piano?
Yes, I started to like it then.
Yeah.
I used to, my father never liked, he called it, I don't know, he didn't call it ragtime, he called it something. He didn't call it jazz or anything, but he didn't like that kind of music. So the only time I could play it was when my father was not there. And my sister would bring home some sheet music, you know, the Sheik of Araby and Avalon and things like that, way before your time. And I'd sit down and play it, and I got to like it. And then I started going out by myself, going out of the house, and I'd listen. I was too young to be admitted to any of the clubs there, but I used to listen to Baby and Johnny Dots outside of Kelly's Stables, which was on the north side. I didn't have to go all the way out to the south side. And then later on, I ventured out and used to listen to all the greats. That's all there is to it. There's so many of them. And Chicago was really a good town those days.
What kind of tunes did they play? What sort of songs?
Well, I don't think I ever heard them play When the Saints Come Marching In. It seemed to me that just came along recently.
Yeah.
They played the typical tunes that came up from New Orleans, you know, that were brought up by Oliver and Jimmy Noon and Louis, of course. I mean, but they played an awful lot of popular tunes, which the way they swing it, I mean, it sounded different, you know. It was wonderful.
When you started to play yourself, what sort of tunes did you start to play?
San. I bet you never heard that, did you?
Well, I never heard you play it.
Oh, Lordy, I used to knock the jabers out of that one, I tell you. They're crazy. You know, tunes like in those days, they were, I don't know, they're kind of funny now. These days, you don't seem to get anything that's right.
Did you start out working as a solo pianist, Joe, or with groups?
Well, my first job, I hadn't joined the union yet. I was known still as Joseph Michael Patrick Francis Terrence Dennis O'Sullivan.
That's a good name.
It's pretty good. And I hadn't joined the Chicago local of the American Federation of Musicians, and I was offered a job, a summer resort job up in Wisconsin. I think it was Lake James. And it was a four-piece band, a violinist, Larry Byrne, two banjoists, and myself. And all three of them were studying for the priesthood. So help me. This was their last year before they would take the vows or what they have to do. And I think only one of them made it. But boy, they were wild. They really were.
Who were the pianists that you encountered in those days in Chicago that impressed you?
Well, Jelly Roll Morton used to come through there. Fats Waller, bless his heart, he came through 1925. I believe he was playing one of the theaters down on State Street there. I don't know whether, maybe it might have been a Majestic. It was in the Chicago Loop anyway.
Do you do Fats Waller tunes still?
Well, I've been doing Keeping Out of Mischief Now and Ain't Misbehaving, but not. I don't do like the waltz, the jitterbug waltz. I don't do that.
How about tunes like Squeeze Me?
Can do anytime, sure.
Would you?
Can do.
All right.
Well, I hit a fine clinker there. Did you hear that? Shame on me.
Did you know Fats well, Joe?
Very well. Very well. I think, I believe I know Fats. I beg your pardon, I knew Fats more intimately than any other of all my colored friends. And better than Earl, although Earl and I, as you know, our paths cross. Yeah. But Fats was always welcome at my home, and I was also always welcome at his home when I'd come to New York. And the last time I saw Fats, he threw a terrific party in Los Angeles, and he took a whole suite of rooms, and he had the caterers there, all the drinks in the world, and food and everything, and a piano. Oh, we had a ball. And I had to be at, I think I had to be either Paramount or Universal Studio, where I was finishing up on a picture, and Fats was taking the train back to New York the following day. So I'm working up when we got the break right before 12 o'clock, and one of the grips came up to me and he said, you hear the news? And I said, what? He said, Said, your friend Fats Waller is dead. I said, you know, what are you talking about? I just saw him. I left him a few hours ago. Here, my eyes were like this, you know. Wow. So I called my ex-wife, and I said, have you had the radio on? And she said, yes. She said, your friend, Mr. Waller, is dead. She was a Southern girl, so needless to say, there was a little bit of things going there, but I didn't care. Oh, by the way, she was the reason I wrote Little Rock Getaway.
Really?
Yeah, that was my first wife.
Was she from Little Rock?
Yes, sure.
That's a marvelous title.
Well, I was happy to get away from there, I'll tell you that.
When did you write that, Joe? When did you write Little Rock Getaway?
Right the same year I did Gin Mill. I was down in New Orleans with Roger Wolf Kahn's band. And Artie Shaw, by the way, was in that band.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, that was wonderful. We used to look over there. He was the highest paid musician in the band. And Charlie Teagard and I, we were almost like little sidemen, you know. And Roger Wolf Kahn was courting one of the Williams sisters then. And so here would be Artie Shaw. And the music stand is here, and he's having all these books, you know, which were too deep for me to even understand. And somebody to have to punch them, you know. We had all these big arrangements, cost Roger Wolf Kahn thousands of dollars. And, pardon me. And so Artie would pick up the clarinet, and he'd go through his thing, and then he'd put it down and start reading again, you know. Oh, wonderful. Well, anyway, to get back. So I instead of coming back to New York with Charlie and the rest of the band, I had met this gal in New York. She aspired for show business and never made it. So I called her from New Orleans, and she said, well, come on to Little Rock, Arkansas. It's just a little ways. I mean, get on the train, you know. Oh, boy, why did I ever do that? Next thing I knew, I was married.
Yeah, how many records have there been of Little Rock Getaway?
As far as I know, you mean the artists and the bands who have recorded it? I would say there must be 15.
Yeah, at least.
I think the last one was your friend who I caught on your program last night, Mr. Mulligan. I believe he was the last one. I know David Brubeck did it. I think Pete Fontaine did it. Yeah. And, of course, the Crosby Band.
Okay. Does Joe Sullivan feel like doing it now?
Oh, brother. What time is it? Okay.
You have time.
You better keep your fingers crossed. Ooh-wee. I don't know how you ever talked me into that. Now you know why I wanted to get away from Little Rock.
Yeah.
Get me, I have nothing against those people down there. But it's just not my bowl of cherries. Pardon me.
Joe, when you first came to live in San Francisco, one of the things that really knocked me out when I first had a chance to hear you at length was the fact that you played so many ballads that I hadn't heard you play on records. Show tunes, pretty songs, romantic songs. And in a way, this is a side of the jazz musician that the public doesn't get from records too much. Did you always play those ballads with him?
Well, I always loved to play it because it seemed to me there was a certain class of people, maybe I'm not describing them right. There is definitely, there are people who besides hearing me break my neck on Little Rock Getaway or at the jazz band ball, Clarinet Marmalade, that's a plenty, they just soon sit back, relax, have a cigarette and maybe a highball and have me play just anything that comes to me. It's an old show tune or some of the standards, what have you.
Which of those, what's the most popular? What are the ones you get the requests for the most on those?
Well, I'd have to call my wife.
Yeah. Things like yesterday. Things like...
She's the one. Every time she comes out to the Trident, I mustn't forget, I have to plug our little old Sunday night at the Trident. She has a very good idea of the ballads, and I forget, you know.
Memories of You?
Memories of You, I've Got It Bad, That Ain't Good, which is the one I did down at Monterey. Yeah. Which was, I like to do it there. I thought it was different for a change.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
You like Memories of You?
Love it.
Would you care to hear it?
Absolutely.
Can do.
Oh, I used to hear the bands playing that on remote broadcasts from Chicago late at night.
Oh, do you remember, wasn't it Ethel Waters, that very fine... Now she's acting more than singing, I guess her voice is probably. Didn't she make a... Pardon me, Ron. Didn't she make a record of that? I believe she did.
She also made one, I've Got It Bad and That Ain't Good, too. You remember that?
I've got it bad and that ain't good.
Yeah.
Or I've got it good and that ain't bad.
Yeah, depending on what you...
It depends on the way you want to think. I suppose you'll notice I need a haircut very badly. I didn't realize that I was going to be on camera today.
Well, we have facilities here, but not barbers.
No, my barber, he retired, and I've gone to everybody else in our neighborhood, and I swear, every time I come home, Mrs. Sullivan will say, "Oh, no, not again."
Not again.
So I'm going to try to get her to take up the little business, and then I'll pay her.
Very good.
Keep it in the family.
Did you ever, to get back to Fats Waller, whom you mentioned earlier, did you ever hear him play your organ?
Oh, yes. You know, he and Willie the Line Smith, at Pod's and Jerry's, they used to have cutting contests, and I was always in there, and occasionally they let me sit in, you know. And afterwards, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd usually go and get chili or ribs or something like that, and then Fats would take me up to this wonderful theater where they had this big, beautiful organ. And nobody there except the cleaning women. Yeah. They'd be up around the balcony and everything. Fats would sit down and play the most marvelous music. I was sitting right back of him. And, of course, we had our jug over on the side, you know. I never heard anybody play organ like he did. I believe he played almost equally as well as he did piano, because I think he could get just a little more in it somehow. Oh, what a man.
He was a marvelous piano player. I never heard him play organ except on a couple of records.
Well, I don't think the records did him justice at all, Ralph. I don't think he had the feeling. He was more relaxed, I know, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, naturally, you know. Everybody is if you made a night of it. But when you go in cold into a studio and you sit down and try to play his, like the jitterbug waltz. And then he kidded around so much that I don't think anybody took him seriously. They should have heard him when he was really playing magnificently, really was.
Curious thing, although I know it's Louis' record that I first knew the tune from, but Black and Blue has always been associated with Fats Waller in my memories somehow. He didn't write it, did he?
Yes, I believe he did, along with Andy Rizzoff.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
And in fact, they collaborated, as you know, on a whole gang of tunes.
Do you do that too?
Sure.
Would you?
Well, if you can stand it.
Anything you can play, I believe me.
Oh, you are too kind, boy, too kind.